Hello and welcome to The Bard's Truth with your host, the Green Bard. This is Dany's Dragon Bonds, Volume 3, Part 4. An avenging apex predator nests atop pyramids, covering Dany and her dragons during the siege and conquering of Meereen. A Storm of Swords, Daenerys 5. In Meereen, as before in Yunkai, her dragons are again all around her, lending courage and strength through their bond and her embracing of her dragon identity as she insists on attacking Meereen. "I must have this city," she told them, sitting cross-legged on a pile of cushions, her dragons all about her. Viserion then acts strangely around Brown Ben Plum at the end of the meeting. Her captains bowed and left her with her handmaids and her dragons, but as Brown Ben was leaving, Viserion spread his pale white wings and flapped lazily at his head. One of the wings buffeted the sellsword in his face. The white dragon landed awkwardly with one foot on the man's head and one on his shoulder, shrieked and flew off again. "He likes you, Ben," said Dany. Brown Ben goes on to talk about how he has a drop of the dragon blood himself. I suppose it's possible that this might have been the beginning of a dragon rider bond between Ben and Viserion, though, given the events to come, I doubt it will ever come to fruition. As Dany considers her dragon identity and dragon rider bond with Drogon, directly implying that Drogon will be her mount. When Brown Ben left, she lay back on her cushions. "If you were grown," she told Drogon, scratching him between the horns, "I'd fly you over the walls and melt that harpy down to slag. But it would be years before her dragons were large enough to ride. And when they are, who shall ride them? The dragon has 3 heads, but I have only 1. She thought of Daario. Several mentions of heads of the dragon, blood of the dragon, and other dragon identity follow, as Dany works through how Jorah and Daario fit in her world. After the attack by Meero, the Mother of Dragons rouses her fury on Jorah and Barristan for their lies. All 3 dragons mirror her. "I was going to take you home." Her dragon sensed her fury. Viserion roared, and smoke rose gray from his snout. Drogon beat the air with black wings, and Rhaegal twisted his head back and belched flame. I should say the word and burn the 2 of them. Was there no one she could trust? No one to keep her safe? Are all the knights of Westeros so false as you 2? Get out, before my dragons roast you both. What does roast liar smell like? As foul as Brown Ben's sewers. Go! Drogon, bonded most closely with her, continues the mirroring as she grapples with her decision as to what to do with them. "To hell! To serve King Robert!" Dany felt hot tears on her cheeks. Drogon screamed, lashing his tail back and forth. "The others can have you both. Go! Go away forever, both of you. The next time I see your faces, I'll have your traitor heads off." She could not say the words, though. "They betrayed me, but they saved me. But they lied. You go. My bear, my fierce, strong bear. What will I do without him? The old man, my brother's friend. You go. Go. Where?" Of course, the where is Brown Ben's sewers, where she sent them. Again, a wise decision, especially when they woke the dragon. If Drogon is influencing her actions here, it is not driving her to rash decision-making. A Storm of Swords, Daenerys 6. Her conquest complete and the rigors of rule not yet set in, Dany feels like a god after taking up residence atop the Great Pyramid of Mereen. Could this be something like the aloofness her forebears felt? Targaryens infamously argued for the doctrine of Targaryen exceptionalism, which bred an elitism and superiority complex that turned downright nasty in some of her forebears in Westeros. Is this a hint of something to come for her? We must watch for this. Dany broke her fast under the persimmon tree that grew in the terrace garden, watching her dragons chase each other about the apex of the Great Pyramid where the huge bronze harpy once stood. Meereen had a score of lesser pyramids, but none stood even half as tall. From here she could see the whole city. Up here in her garden, Dany sometimes felt like a god, living atop the highest mountain in the world. This haughty position, by elevation, is also very much like that of her dragons in normal flight. Might the dragons feel elite up so high and even influence their riders to think the same way? I think it possible. And I'll point out Hagen's warning to Varamir about skin-changing birds. "Some skins you never want to wear, boy. You won't like what you become." Birds were the worst, to hear him tell it. Men were not meant to leave the earth. Spend too much time in the clouds and you never want to come back down again. A Dance with Dragons prologue. I think the concept of a bond to a dragon may be similar. It must be very foreign to have a dragon's thoughts influence your mind. And Aegon the Conqueror, to whom Dany compares herself next, had a very special dragon bonded to himself, Balerion the Black Dread. Her identity as a dragon is tied to him in many ways, down to the coloring of their mounts. And of course, I believe Drogon is very special as well, with the red eyes. Today, she wore a robe of purple samite with a silver sash, and on her head, the three-headed dragon crown the Tourmaline Brotherhood had given her in Qarth. When she was dressed, Missandei brought her a polished silver glass so she could see how she looked. Dany stared at herself in silence. Is this the face of a conqueror? So far as she could tell, she still looked like a little girl. She's trying to hold her identity. Her dragon identity has always given her confidence before. Now she's questioning herself for not using her dragons. No one was calling her Daenerys the Conqueror yet, but perhaps they would. Aegon the Conqueror had won Westeros with 3 dragons, but she had taken Meereen with sewer rats and a wooden cock, a battering ram, of course. What Dany may be failing to realize is that the dragons weren't used in every battle in Aegon's War of Conquest either. We get another scene where Dany and her dragons wait, and the trio roars together at a turning point. The dragons certainly have more keen senses than humans, and Dany seems very attuned to their perception of the events in the battle. Their reaction seems to be mirroring. The dragon seems to recognize a favorable outcome, and the most likely way it happens is by sensing Daenerys' reaction and mood through the bond. Dany had wanted to lead the attack herself, but to a man her captain said that would be madness, and her captains never agreed on anything. Instead, she remained in the rear, sitting atop her silver in a long shirt of mail. She heard the city fall from half a league away, though, when the defenders' shouts of defiance changed to cries of fear. Her dragons had roared as one in that moment, filling the night with flame. The slaves are rising, she knew at once. My sewer rats have gnawed off their chains. Next, Dany uses her dragon identity to describe how she had the heads of Meereen's chief slaver families executed in punishment or retribution, comparing to how the slave children had been executed to break the morale of Dany's army. She regrets it, and again, this shows wisdom. History shows us that an eye for an eye does not solve problems on a large scale. She had them nailed to wooden posts around the plaza, each man pointing at the next. The anger was fierce and hot inside her when she gave the command. It made her feel like an avenging dragon. But later, when she passed the men dying on the posts, when she heard their moans and smelt their bowels in blood. Next, we get another reminder of the dragon's affinity for Brown Ben Plum. One might also take note that Ben also has an affinity for the dragons. Looked at in this way, it is not surprising that he abandoned her cause in a dance with dragons when she abandoned her dragons. These at least she could rely on, or so she hoped, and Brown Ben Plum as well. Solid Ben with his gray-white hair and weathered face, so beloved of her dragons. And Daario beside him, glittering in gold. Daario and Ben Plum, Grey Worm, Irri, Jiqui, Missandei. As she looked at them, Dany found herself wondering which of them would betray her next. The next few dragon mentions are not bond-related. Dany thinks that the dragon has 3 heads, showing that she believes in that prophecy and is still mentally comparing herself to the Conqueror. Then, she is addressed several times as the Mother of Dragons by the Astapori envoy. This leads to her dragon identity being thought of by herself when addressing the betrayal of the Westerosi Knights. She uses that identity to bolster her resolve to be strong in her dispensation on them. Dany shifted uncomfortably on the ebony bench. She dreaded what comes next. Yet she had put it off too long already. Yunkai and Astapor, threats of war, marriage proposals, the march west looming over all. I need my knights. I need their swords. I need their counsel. Yet the thought of seeing Jorah Mormont again made her feel as if she swallowed a spoonful of flies, angry, agitated, sick. She could almost feel them buzzing around her belly. I am the blood of the dragon. I must be strong. I must have fire in my eyes when I face them, not tears. Tell Belwas to bring my knights, Dany commanded, before she could change her mind, my good knights. The courage she draws upon making her decision to send Jorah away is tied to her dragon identity and perhaps even to her bond to the dragons. Drogon clearly is in her mind thereafter, and he reacts strongly, mirroring her mood when he sees her. The independent personality of the others is also on display. Viserion is hunting, while Rhaegal sleeps by the pool. Notably, there is no sign of her bond to them. She even muses that one may not come back one day. I doubt she thought it would be Drogon, although he does come back eventually. Dany fled from the choice. Out onto the terrace, she found Rhaegal asleep by the pool, a green and bronze coil basking in the sun. Drogon was perched up atop the pyramid, in the place where the huge bronze harpy had stood before she had commanded to be pulled down. He spread his wings and roared when he spied her. There was no sign of Viserion, but when she went to the parapet and scanned the horizon, she saw pale wings in the far distance, sweeping above the river. He is hunting. They grow bolder every day, yet it still made her anxious when they flew too far away. One day, one of them may not return, she thought. After another mention of her moniker as a dragon, she considers directly her dragon identity as a legacy from Aerys. Madness. She's mentally dealing with the idea that she is unable to protect all her people if she quit Meereen immediately, which certainly does not seem a mad train of thought. She then decides to remain for political reasons, but mostly to allow her dragons to grow. Mother of dragons, indeed. Freedom to starve? Asked Dany sharply. Freedom to die? Am I a dragon or a harpy? Am I mad? Do I have the taint? A dragon, Sir Barristan said with certainty. Meereen is not Westeros, Your Grace. But how can I rule 7 kingdoms if I cannot rule a single city? He had no answer to that. Dany turned away from them to gaze out over the city once again. My children need time to heal and learn. My dragons need time to grow and test their wings. And I need the same. I will not let this city go the way of Astapor. I will not let the harpy of Yunkai chain up those freed all over again. She turned back to look at their faces. I will not march. She's nesting.
We'll see you all next time for A Dance with Dragons. Apologies for the recording quality. These were recorded outside while I was on vacation. Soon I'll be recording again in.
Thanks to all the terrific artists whose work is featured on this video.
Thanks especially to those in my family who helped in this series so far. If you enjoy this content, you can also consider supporting